God do the work, and let God do the work, and let God do the work, and it comes out right. And let God do the work, and let God do the work, and let God do the work, and it comes out right. Every time I let God do the work, and let God do the work, and let God do the work, and it comes out right. Sing the song, and let God sing the song, and let God sing the song, and let God sing the song, and it comes out right. And let God sing the song, and let God sing the song, and let God sing the song, and it comes out right. Speak the word. And let God speak the word, and let God speak the word, and let God speak the word, and it comes out right. And let God speak the word, and let God speak the word, and let God speak the word, and it comes out right. Do the work. And let God do the work, and let God do the work, and let God do the work, and it comes out right. And let God do the work, and let God do the work, and let God do the work, and it comes out right. And let God do the work, and it comes out right. And it does every time we let God do the work, and it's really a challenge to let God do the work, isn't it? You know, I was thinking this morning as I was getting ready and I was driving over here, I love Heartlight. I love our experience here, and one of the reasons I love it is because no matter what's been going on in the week, there could be events that challenge us, that make us sad, that chip away at our faith in people. We always know there's a place we can come on Sunday. And that has been my vision for Heartlight since day one, is that every single person here is a loving heart. And you know when you come here on Sunday, you're going to be loved, you're going to be saved, you're going to be reminded of who you are, even though during the week you forgot. And I have done that myself, I forget, and then I have to remind myself. But that's what is so special about this community. Because as you know, some spiritual communities have conflict, and we have never had a conflict at Heartlight. So give yourselves a hand, please. It's really pretty amazing.
Lauren, thank you so much for creating that.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. But I always say, couldn't have done it without you. Me standing up here talking to nobody really
Banners.
wouldn't do a lot. So, Jan is out of town.
She's up in Hollister.
She's in Hollister. Okay. I have no idea where Hollister is, but I'm going to assume it's far away.
Up by Monterey.
Up by Monterey, that I do know. And Missy is not here. Her brother did pass away. But it was, I think, certainly a blessing, given the circumstances. It was what we would, I think, of as a release from suffering. So she's down there with Jackie, which I think I can certainly understand.
There in Texas? Down there?
No, in Palm Springs. She's with Jackie in Palm Springs. So, but again, as you can imagine, whether you've had kids or not, just the idea of losing 2 of your 3 children it's a tough one. So, let's see, what else? And I don't know about Miss Nona. Don't know where she is today. Anybody have anything that they would like to ask for prayers for? Or yes. Oh, your great-granddaughter. Now, is she having the surgery, Shirley?
Well, I don't know yet. She's 2.5. She has multiple brain problems, water on the brain.
Okay, so she's got quite a few health problems right now. Okay, multiple things wrong, and she's 2.5.
And also for my son Vern.
And for Vern, okay. All right, well, today when we do our invocation, let's hold them in our hearts. Yes, Lynn?
And also just once again, our country and the world. Because
Yes, our country and the world definitely need it. And again, as I said, when I think of all the terrible things that have happened and the death and shootings and all kinds of really horrible things, again, I am grateful for the love that we create here, because it is a refuge from that, and it's a way to strengthen us as we go back out into the world. Okay, so let's have our invocation. Yes, I'm sorry, Susan.
Well,
Yes.
I'm reading my cough drop.
Yes.
And one of the sayings is, elicit a few wows today.
Elicit a few wows today.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. I like that.
Wow.
Be odd. Let's do our aerobics. Yes, Joe.
I just want to mention that Rich was kind enough to bring a bunch of avocados.
And Rich brought a basket of avocados. Yes, let's give him a hand for that. And if you're an avocado fan, yes.
And Laurel needs some prayers for help too.
Yeah, is it the back is still really difficult? Okay. Let's just keep all our family in our hearts today and know that they can feel what we declare to be true. Okay, anything else? Okay, let's do our opening hymn then. If you'll go to page 6 in your hymnals. This is one of those reminders, and I love it. With those incredibly peppy backing vocal karaoke people. Okay, go. There's a little delay. This is the day that the Lord has made, that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it, and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it, 'cause this is the day that the Lord has made. This is the day that the Lord has made, that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it, and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it, 'cause this is the day that the Lord has made, that the Lord has made. Thank you. So if the Lord made this day, what are we going to do with it? Well, we're going to rejoice in it. And we're going to remind, a reminder of where we are today. Not only do we create a sacred space, but other people in this community of Temple Beth Shalom create a sacred space here. So we are, and I was recently reminded by Rabbi Cohen that she's very glad that we're here, because she knows we are adding to that energy. So. Everything I need is right in front of me. Every place I stand is holy ground. Everyone I meet has something beautiful for me. Everywhere I go, it's all around. Something sacred here, something beautiful, something real and true, something powerful. There is something sacred here, something wonderful that only I can do. There is something sacred here. And today we feel what is sacred. That which is sacred lives inside of us, at the center of our hearts. And today as we gather together in the circle of light and love that is Heartlight, we extend our powerful, powerful mode of healing out into the world, and we embrace all those who need that healing, especially healing from grief. All the members of our own Heartlight community who are not here today, equally we include them, we embrace them, we send them our light and love. We see them surrounded by the light of God and imbued with the love of God. We are powerful healers, we are powerful agents of change, we are creators. And as we walk through the world, we remember that with every breath, with every thought. And let us say together, and so it is. Amen. Thank you. And our lay reader for today is Miss Lynn. Let's give her a hand.
Hi. I had two readings. I wasn't sure which one to read, and I think I figured out, well, I'll know when I hear the first part of our service. So this one is from June of 2008, and it's entitled Anchored. Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and she shall sustain thee. That's Psalms 55:22. And from the Silence of Mind, page 335, someday we shall learn to lay our burdens on the altar of love. If you are feeling sluggish, fatigued, lethargic, or apathetic, you could be suffering from spiritual post-traumatic stress disorder. This is a common condition which can follow an emotional or physical trauma or other type of violation. The solution to these traumas or violations is to release them. Lighten your burdened heart by anchoring yourself to the spiritual truth of who you are. By anchoring ourselves to spirit, we will find security and stability. We can become stable enough to let useless, senseless negativity quietly drift away from us. The negative energy goes back into the ether and dissolves into the nothingness from which it came. In addition to anchoring ourselves to spirit, we can also release our burdens by using the tools of prayer, forgiveness, meditation walks, and deep breathing exercises. All of these are ways to send the effects of spiritual post-traumatic stress disorder on their way, so that we can rest securely on the anchor of our divine and spiritual truth of well-being once again. The affirmation is, I release any physical or emotional traumas that may be robbing me of my vitality and obscuring the truth of my perfect, divine well-being. I am securely anchored in God. I allow the remembrance of any violations towards me to float away and dissolve into the void of negative nothingness from which they came.
It is easy to feel negative about the world when bad things happen to good people, isn't it? As I said, when shootings and plane crashes, helicopter crashes, you just kind of go, how could all this be? Well, we really don't know the why, and we don't necessarily understand what led up to many of these events, but we know one thing: God doesn't make it happen. Okay, God's not in charge, and there's no reason to say, why didn't God prevent this? Because we as human beings are making our own choices, and some of them are very painful choices. So, part 2 today of the dynamic laws of prosperity, which, as you know, most people go, oh, you mean money? And I go, well, yeah, but that's not the only thing we're talking about. So to recap a bit from last week, if I were to ask you, where is your good, what would you say to me?
Everywhere.
Everywhere, thank you. Lynn, you are listening. My good is everywhere. So this series is about knowing who we are, what we can create, but most of all, it's being ready to receive it. You would be surprised how many people honestly don't think that they deserve a lot of health, a lot of wealth, a lot of peace, a lot of joy. They just don't. Some of them will look at the events of the world as they unfold and say, how could I be peaceful? How could I be joyful? How could I feel prosperous? How could I feel any of these really positive things when so many people in the world are suffering? Well, as we've talked about before, and I know Lynn has quoted Wayne Dyer on this, you can't improve the world by feeling bad about it. You're not going to improve the world by saying, woe is me. You can't feel bad enough about something that's happened to change what has happened. Okay? So, like I said, my story of walking through Home Depot saying I'm not seeing it is one of those many times when we forget that universal law works all the time, not just part of the time. Because it's a universal law. As Catherine Ponder writes, there is gold dust in the air for you, for me, for everyone. So seeing with our God eyes is how we find it. How many of you see blessings when you open your eyes, right? You open your eyes and go, oh, what a great blessing. Some people it goes right over the top. They don't even know that they have experienced a blessing. We are entitled, as she says, to plenty in every area of our lives, and that's going to depend on you. What does plenty mean to you? Plenty for some people is plenty of fresh air. Plenty for some people would like to, somebody like Eunice is having her garden burgeon and thrive. That was plenty for her. So just remember that it's up to you what your plenty is all about. So we have to notice blessings. We have to notice the gold dust. We have to also do that powerful gratitude thing, because that's really, really, really powerful. I also talked about the idea that prosperity is your divine heritage. That is not egotism. It's simply the acknowledgement of who we are and from whence we came. You are the expression of infinite source. You share spiritual DNA with that which created you. What is true of God is true of you. And I want you to hear that. What is true of God is true of you. So all those wonderful things you think about God, start thinking about you. If God knows how to
Be love.
you know how to
Be love.
Thank you. Doubleheader. It is your nature. It is your nature. Believing in lack and limitation is an error in thinking. It is missing the mark. And when we miss the mark, we are free to repent, which means change our minds. When you say, you know what, that is so not working for me. Being poor is a condition, which we are not decrying or criticizing someone for being poor, but we are talking about poverty consciousness as a way of thinking. I was just watching, I think either Russell or Sandra sent me a messenger thing with some history of Orange County, and it was a man talking about what Orange County was like back in like 1890 and 1900, and he lived on the Moulton Ranch, which is, like there's Moulton Parkway now, but he lived on the Moulton Ranch, and he talked about the blessings, but he started out by saying, we lived in a house, and well, it didn't have running water, and well, we had an outhouse, and it didn't have heat, and it didn't have this. He goes, but we weren't poor. And I thought, what a beautiful saying. He loved his life, he loved his mom and dad, and they had a very rich life. And it was hard work, but he still loved it. So when we are in the flow of truth, we don't think being poor is a virtue, right? It doesn't make us more godly. There is no upside to pretending that you're less than what you are. That which created us does not judge us, does not send cruel trials and tribulations to find out which of us is a saint and which of us isn't. The only one who can punish us is who? And the only one who can receive the good that is everywhere is the same thing. So, excuse me. If you don't know your divine heritage, claim your divine heritage. Poverty consciousness may seep in and begin to be part of your thinking, and you might fall into it without being aware. I also told you last week a very important principle, that God can only do for us what God can do through us. I know we'd like to think that there's invisible fairies, well, actually I do believe in fairies, but we'd like to think that they're going to come and fix everything. But God can only do for us what God can do through us. We have to create the channel through which all that goodness can flow. So how many of you have had non-prosperous thoughts this week? I'm going to raise my hand because I know that I have. Maybe just a flash of, darn, I wish this was different, or I wish this was something else, or I wish I had this or that. It would make things easier. That's poverty consciousness, okay? And it's not that I stayed in it, but I certainly wallowed briefly in it. But we need to have those affirmations, which is what I was doing as I was curing for that, treating for that, by saying things like, God is my sufficiency, God is my surplus. Spirit provides everything. Spirit is at work in my life right now. All of those things, just use them. Whichever works for you, use them. Live it, breathe it, demonstrate it. Today I want to talk about promises. I'm sure all of you are very good at keeping your promises, because we all are people of honor and we do our best. God is impeccable at keeping promises. It's just we have to discern what those promises are. God did not make a promise, your life is going to be hunky-dory. You shall have no pain in your life. You shall have no loss in your life. You shall have all these things and life will be a bed of roses. None of those ever show up as promises. God makes one promise. Whatever you ask for, the answer is yes. Isn't that simple? Whatever you ask for, the answer is yes. So even that old saying about God answers some prayers and not others, I'm sorry, but we will have to diverge from that because God answers all prayers and the answer is yes. All right? Which is also the word amen and the phrase we use, and so it is. That's God answering us. Yep, you got it. So whether you call that which created us God, Mother, Father, God, Source, Spirit, Universe, Life, Love, doesn't matter. The response is yes. Whatever we're sending out, radiating, thinking about a lot, so if you have a really bad day and you're thinking all day about lack and limitation and pain and sorrow and sadness, how do you feel at the end of the day? Are you good?
Exhausted.
Exhausted, exactly. You're exhausted. And you're not any happier, I might add. But if we're having those kinds of thoughts, the answer again is yes. When you think about it, that's the only way we could be creative. The only way we can have free will is if God said yes to everything. And most people don't realize that. They say, well, God should have said no to this person who did this bad thing. Then how would that be free will? How would that be having a choice? It isn't. So we must take responsibility for our thoughts and actions all the time. There's also this thing, and they talk about it more in the Eastern traditions, is the path of non-resistance. I know you've all heard about that. And what does that mean? It doesn't mean that you don't take a stand in matters that are very important to you, that you say these are the principles I believe in. What it means is, it doesn't tell us to be marshmallows or pushovers or people who can be steamrolled by everything that happens. The principle of non-resistance stands for one idea that is best illustrated by the martial arts. When we push back, when we push against something that comes into our lives, we give it more energy. When we hate it, resent it, dislike it, rail against it, we give it more energy. I've told you before, in Aikido and other martial arts, when a person comes at you, the best thing you can do is step aside. Their energy carries them into a place that is not very powerful. You let them do it. You let them wear themselves out while you move and breathe with what is happening. So, when something untoward happens, something we don't care for, what's our best opportunity at that moment? Or what can we best exercise at that moment? It would be non-resistance. But why? Because it happened. It's already happened. It's there. It's in front of you. How are you going to deal with it? Are you going to stand there and say, this should not be so? Okay, and that's going to get you how far? You're right. It's a shame. How is that going to solve it? This should not be so. This isn't fair. That's one of my favorite ones. This isn't fair. If we talk about it incessantly, argue about it, become angry by it, you get the idea. Because we are completely absorbed at that moment in what we don't want. It is occupying our every thought, what we don't want. So rather than flailing away at a person or an obstacle or a situation, and we can do our share of flailing, it's just very tiring, I might add. It's like one of those people who does the shadow boxing and they're just flailing away. Keep your energy focused on what you wish to create. How do you wish to be in the world? Do you wish to be a sad, angry person who resents the events that are going on? How we react to events is key to what we create. This is an inclusive principle. One of the major principles in all of our spiritual paths is that the universe is inclusive. It includes everything. The things we call good, the things we call bad, and the things we don't care one way or the other about. What we deem joyful, what we deem painful, it's all included. Okay? In other words, God's yes. So how do we align with yes and let it help us? Think for a moment about the things for which you've prayed and affirmed that have not manifested in a way that you desire. There's bound to be something. If these universal principles are true, how is it possible? If what I'm saying is actually true, how were your prayers not manifest? Your desires not manifest? When you found yourself saying, well, where the heck is God's yes? Because I ain't seeing it. I've been affirming all over the place. Where is it? First of all, let us understand what the yes is. We see it everywhere. Ever seen birds flock and fly? They fly together, right? We have no idea why. Canada geese fly in a wedge. One leads the way, and periodically another goose gets up front because it gets tiring to lead the way. What about plants and trees? Don't they just kind of grow? Just leave them alone and they grow? And they produce more oxygen for us every day, which is kind of nice too. I like that part about it, so we can breathe. The ultimate definition of the yes is life unfolding in every possible permutation. Life is life, and it will come out as you, or a plant, or a tree, or a bird in complete synchrony with its brother and sister birds. It's a flow, it's a vibration, it's a moving forward. When you are angry, don't you feel stuck? Don't you feel like your feet have now been planted in cement and you cannot move forward because you are angry, you're resentful? You're out of the flow. You want to be in the flow. The universe says, if you want to evolve, ask yourself every day, what brings me joy? What brings me joy? And for all of you, it's going to be different. Okay? All possibilities exist. Now, getting back to the idea of why things don't manifest that we've been praying for, when you have a desire, let's say it's a really highfalutin desire, and you say, that would bring me joy. How often is your very next thought, oh, but I can't have that. That's too expensive. I don't have the funds for that. No one's around to help me with that. I'm not strong enough to do that. You just don't realize how often your ego mind jumps right in and says, hold on, can't do that. I don't have the resources to make that happen. And also there's a part of us that says, but wouldn't it be completely irresponsible to go through life having fun? Having joy all the time? That just seems completely ridiculous. Isn't it unrealistic to think of never straying off the high road? We always want to say, well, I fall off the high road. Well, we do, but why couldn't we envision staying on it? So, what do you think? Is seeing life an opportunity for fun and joy being irresponsible? Does it make you, frivolous? Can you be frivolous and still be spiritual? Still be a good person? Still be powerful? Oh yeah, absolutely. Is it unrealistic to decide that we'll keep to the high road and think before reacting? I've been testing that idea this week. Keep to the high road. That isn't unrealistic at all. And the more we practice, the better we get. Consider what the world would be like if everyone adopted the life purpose of living in joy. Can you even imagine a world like that? What would it be like? I'm asking you, what would it be like if every person wanted to find their joy?
Did
It-
they find it or wanted to?
They want to, and by wanting to, they continue to do so. Which, by the way, does not mean hanging out and doing nothing. Some people might think that, but when they come right down to it, joy is about being a part of the world. There can be joy in your work as well as your play. There can be joy in many kinds of activities and endeavors that demonstrate that you love your fellow human beings. We've talked about what is your purpose here, to give, to be love. But if your idea of joy did happen to be that grass hut on the beach, where you get to just lie out on your towel every day, more power to you, because you're happy. You're bringing happy to the world. Now, some people say, well, I can't just sit back and do nothing and all my desires are met. And I would say, yep, you're right. Not exactly nothing. Let's use our gardening example. If you would take great joy in a beautiful garden that looked just so, would you be willing to work at it? I know Lynn does. She works a lot in her garden. Because, if I may presume, Lynn, you want it to look a certain way. You want it to have certain kinds of flowers, certain kind of beauty.
And I want it to stay alive.
And she wants it to stay alive. So she is willing to work at it, and it probably wouldn't be as useful if you were to stand inside, look out the window and say, garden, be good.
Or look out and say, ooh, it's all dying because I'm not.
Yeah. So yes, there's some work involved. So if you would take great joy in a beautiful garden, you're going to work at it. Before the advent of the internet age, with online dating and match gaming, if you would find joy in having a loving